What does it say for the government? What does it say for Boris Johnson?
Well, I wouldn't read too much into it, in the sense that it's hard to extrapolate from local elections to the general election in local council elections, but sadly didn't win the 2001 election.
Yeah.
What I think the government is doing and needs to do in the months ahead is concentrate singularly what local councillors, particularly councillors doing a really good job, feel obviously very concerned that their good work is going to be harmed by what's happening in national politics. And so,
What causes a prime minister to lose his composure on camera just 9 months after winning a landslide victory? The answer lies in the brutal reality Starmer now faces. Labour has lost 35 council seats, while Reform UK surges 9% in the polls. Is this the fastest collapse of public confidence in British political history? We'll analyse how Starmer's broken promises, from winter fuel payment cuts to £40 billion in tax hikes, have created what critics are calling a government potentially worse than the one voters rejected. Remember stability and competence? Those were the magic words that hypnotised Britain into handing Keir Starmer the keys to number 10. Now, as winter approaches, those words echo like a cruel joke through the homes of over 10 million pensioners who've had their winter fuel payments slashed. So much for protection of the vulnerable. The disconnect between Starmer's promises and his actions has become impossible to ignore. The man who pledged to ease the burden on working families has instead orchestrated £40 billion in tax hikes while pensioners struggle to heat their homes. This isn't just political disappointment, it's genuine suffering with real-world consequences. Former UKIP leader Henry Bolton didn't mince words when he said, "It feels as though the government hates everybody or it doesn't care about vast swathes of the population. People are already suffering enough financially."
a disappointing set of results, as you say, and I'm a former local government secretary, so my heart goes out to all of the hard-working Conservative councillors, and particularly those councils like Westminster and Wandsworth that were doing to be the seismic step forward for the Labour Party that you would expect 2 years out from a general election if they were hoping to win power. To give you the stats, the Labour Party have actually gone backwards, at the moment at least, in the Midlands and the North, which is the battleground really where general elections are won and lost.
His assessment captures the growing sentiment across Britain that Starmer's government has abandoned its responsibility to protect those most vulnerable. The healthcare crisis compounds this betrayal. Bolton highlighted how the elderly, already struggling with heating costs, face an additional burden when seeking medical care. You try and get a doctor's appointment and they'll say ring at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for an emergency appointment. This bureaucratic nightmare forces many seniors to resort to A&E visits, creating additional strain on an already overwhelmed system. Farmers, too, have found themselves in Starmer's crosshairs, facing punishing death duties that threaten generational businesses, all while small boat crossings reach record numbers despite promises of a more effective immigration system. What's particularly telling is Starmer's shifting communication strategy. The confident statesman who promised a new era of competent leadership has transformed into a defensive figure, increasingly irritable during media appearances. His responses to legitimate concerns have become dismissive rather than reassuring, suggesting a man whose political playbook is failing him spectacularly. The Labour strongholds that delivered Starmer's landslide are now experiencing voters' remorse on an unprecedented scale.
The events that you've seen in Number 10, the questions around Sir Keir Starmer in Durham, and the many very serious allegations in the House of Commons around sexism and misogyny. And I wouldn't overstate the concern about the Prime Minister in particular. And I just draw your attention back to the fact that in the key areas of the country where the Prime Minister made so much progress, which suggests that, of course, there's concern about a sitting government in midterm. Of course, there's concern about the economy because we're in a very serious international situation.
A 9.1% collapse in Labour's vote share represents the fastest erosion of public confidence in a new government in modern British political history. This isn't normal post-election adjustment. It's a fundamental rejection of broken promises and misplaced priorities. While Labour supporters watch their votes vanish into thin air, a stunning political resurrection is quietly taking place. This isn't just a story of voters abandoning Starmer, it's about who's picking up the pieces of his shattered promises. The electoral map is being redrawn in ways that defy conventional political wisdom, creating winners in the most unexpected places. The Conservatives, despite their historic defeat just months ago, have somehow gained 22 parliamentary seats. What makes this truly remarkable is that they've achieved this revival while barely moving the needle on their national popularity. Their vote share has increased by a mere 0.2%. This bizarre outcome highlights how Britain's first-past-the-post system can reward parties that haven't actually become more popular, but simply benefit from the collapse of their opposition. But the real political earthquake is happening elsewhere. Reform UK has experienced a meteoric 9% surge in voter support, the largest increase of any party. Even more telling is their consistent performance in local contests, where they've finished second in 6 out of 9 recent council by-elections, third in 2 more, and fourth in just 1. These aren't the numbers of a fringe protest party. They're the signs of a movement that's fundamentally reshaping British politics. What makes Reform's rise particularly astonishing is that it's happening despite an internal civil war that should have destroyed them. The bitter feud between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe has spilled into public view, with Lowe accusing Farage of running the party like a dictatorship. Lowe's removal, amid allegations of bullying, which he denies, has even triggered a police investigation. Yet instead of collapsing under this pressure, Reform has emerged stronger than ever. The latest Find Out Now poll shows the seemingly impossible. Reform UK leading with 27% of voters, ahead of Labour at 24% and the Conservatives at 21%. This represents a complete reordering of Britain's political landscape barely 9 months after the general election. First Past the Post continues to work against Reform, however. Their support, while growing rapidly, remains too geographically dispersed to translate into the parliamentary representation their popularity would suggest. Meanwhile, rural voters, pensioners, and working-class taxpayers, once Labour's core constituencies, are abandoning Starmer in droves, redirecting their support to parties they believe will actually represent their interests. The fall of Starmer's government isn't just about policy failures, it's about the collapse of political trust itself. What we're witnessing reveals a fundamental shift in British politics, where voters are increasingly intolerant of empty promises, regardless of which rosette the politician wears. The breakneck speed of Labour's support erosion signals something far more concerning for Starmer than a mid-term slump. Political analysts now warn that Labour's trajectory could lead to the unthinkable, losing power after just 1 term if they continue alienating key voter demographics. The question hanging over Westminster isn't whether Labour's decline will continue, but whether their opposition can organise quickly enough to capitalise on this extraordinary vulnerability. Britain now finds itself at a genuine political crossroads. The establishment parties face an existential threat, not from each other, but from a public demanding substance over spin. Voters aren't merely switching allegiances. They're fundamentally re-evaluating whether any traditional party truly represents their interests. In this new landscape, authenticity trumps ideology, and results matter more than rhetoric. Starmer's government may learn this lesson too late.